Right guys, so this is going to be my highlights package of the race last night in the not Oz GP, which was run by Veloce Esports. But before we jump into it, I want to quickly say a few things, face to face with the camera and be honest before we jump into things. And last night was an incredible event, I felt really honoured to be a part of it, and I want to give a massive thank you to any person that tuned into any stream. I believe we hit about 180,000 viewers concurrent across all the streams, from the Veloce streams to Lando Norris to Tim Marduk, Arav, the list goes on, Jimmy Broadbent, all these guys, and 180k is incredible numbers. I want to give a massive shout out and thank you to everybody from the Veloce Esports team that was involved, that created this, from the bosses down to the people that run the content side of things, and all the phone calls that were made, all the effort that was done to get out, and contact these people, and also the people that turned up as well, from all over the world, in the US, even my own teammate Sasha Fenitraz, who was racing from Japan in Tokyo. So a massive thank you to everyone that turned up, and also thank you to you guys that watched. And it's not the last one. I believe there's another race in Bahrain next week. Whether it's the same drivers or they're going to try and bring in different drivers, I'm not quite sure what the plan is yet. So if I did race just the one race, I made sure I made it count, and Australia was an incredible race. So a massive thank you to everybody, and we're now going to jump straight into the highlights of my race in the not Australian Grand Prix from last night. Right, so jumping into qualifying, and for this event my teammate was Sasha Fenitraz, the Japanese Formula 3 world champion, and to be fair, I had him with me in Discord. We was chatting away, and he's half Argentine, half French, and to be fair, it was really good. We had a lot of banter, and we was chatting, some points in English, some points in Spanish, and he was also streaming the event himself, so it was really cool, and we had a really good chemistry. Actually, I was quite happy to have him as my teammate, and we got on like a house on fire. But jumping into qualifying, you can see on the screen we set a 19.8 as my first qualifying lap, which is actually incredible. I couldn't do much better than that in practice, so that was already a fantastic banker lap, and I didn't think I'd be able to improve, but then I delivered this absolute beauty of a lap. So into turn one, carrying the speed, making sure you get your gears right and use all the track available. Of course, in this session, cars were locked to equal performance and default setups, and my best lap in time trial with the Mercedes with full setup on is a 119.6. So yeah, so far it's going well. The lap, we're just a fraction up on my previous best, and as we now come towards the end of Sector 1 into the start of Sector 2, we are less than a tenth down on Jarno Otmir through the first sector, carrying the momentum through the little right-left chicane, and now flat out through the long right, braking hard for this 90-degree right, trying to really focus on your exit and trying to pick up the speed as Esteban Gutierrez gets disqualified there for the qualifying session. We go flat out along the back straight, and now full commitment into the chicane. Absolutely perfect, carrying all the speed possible, and we're now over a tenth of a second up as we brake late for this right-hander here, as we've got a car from the left-hand side, carrying all the momentum, using every single curb and every inch of the track, and taking full advantage of the regular corner cutting limits instead of strict for a change, as we make our way into the final couple of corners here, opening up the line through the final corner as much as possible, using the DRS to run up to the line, and we're going to improve by a whopping 2.5 tenths and set a 119.5, and I knew there and then I was not going to improve on that lap. That was a perfect lap, and I did try to go for one more run, and I was up a little bit. I tried to push the brakes a bit more into this corner here, and I did improve a bit more, but then I ran it a bit too hot, locked up a little bit and lost a bit of time, and then the lap kind of fell away from me a little bit. From that point onwards, we pushed on into the chicane, and again I didn't carry as much speed as the last lap, and I didn't actually gain. I actually lost a bit more time, so I abandoned the lap time, and then I went to the pit lane, and then Lando Norris was actually parked up on the right hand side here.
Very kind of you.
That's our race over. Black flag.
I've been disqualified!
Drive back into the pits.
And Lando getting disqualified for parking in the pit lane. I believe he's going to try and read out a sub message, and yeah, he got caught out, and his frustration was very apparent.
No!
And with that, we move into the final qualifying results, and it's Formula Danny picking up pole 119.0, an absolute alien lap from him. Summer Vigang P2 ahead of Jarno Otmir in third, making it a actual F1 Esports 1-2-3. And then we got Veloce Hypers, who is not yet an F1 Esports driver, but I believe he will be once he's old enough, as I believe he's 15, so he's very young, but he's extremely fast. He got fourth place, and then I was the first of the content creators / the non-esports drivers, and I got P5. I managed to beat Tyrrell Limulus, Also, I managed to beat James Baldwin, the world's fastest gamer, and also Thibaut Courtois, who of course is a very fast content creator. And then I managed to beat Stoffel Vandoorne, who did a fantastic job to get P9 and Arif, rounding out the top 10 here in qualifying. And then in terms of those outside the top 10, we do have Louis Delatraz in 11th place for Haas, with AR12 Gaming in P12. Then we've got Jimmy Broadbent in 13th, with Thibaut Courtois in 14th place, the Real Madrid goalkeeper there in his debut qualifying. I believe he had wheel issues the entire event because he is a PS4 player, not a PC player, so I believe he may have had some software issues. But then my teammate Sasha Fenetraz in P15 in the second Williams ahead of Ryan Tavita, who's 16th. And Ryan Tavita, actually, I want to shout him out real quick because he flew from New York down to Miami, I believe, on the day before the event to deliver a sim rig to Stoffel Vandoorne to compete in this race, and then flew straight back. So shout out to Ryan Tavita for that. Then we've got Willany in 17th place, and fair play to him for not finishing last, I believe, on a controller, so well done to him. And then we've got Super GT in 18th as the last classified runner, with Lando Norris, as we saw, get disqualified, and Esteban Gutierrez also not finishing the session, also get disqualified a little bit before that. But either way, that is your grid for the race for the not Australian Grand Prix, and we're now going to move into the race, or should I say the formation lap. And I'll say the formation lap because Lando Norris again made a mistake.
Oh, it's a formation lap. Oh man, I thought that was the race. I thought it was the race. I'm sorry. I was like, oh my god, I'm doing it. I'm amazing.
And moving on to the end of the formation lap, Lando. We're now going to get ready for the start of the race here, and we're starting from P5, going for a one-stop strategy. Not sure I'm going to go for the medium or the hard tyre, depends how long I can carry the soft tyres for, but for now we're going to focus on the first part of the race and the start. So here we go, the lights come on here at the not Australian Grand Prix, and it's lights out and away we go for the first race, and it's a good start off the line. We cover off Terrell Limitless into turn number 1. We're going to try and have a look on the inside of Hypers there as James goes around the outside. There's contact. Vigan goes for a spin, and he spins out of second place in the Renault as we go side by side with Veloce James down towards turn number 3, and it was going pretty well, but then suddenly from the rear we take a huge hit. I believe it was Stoffel Vandoorne in the Mercedes who then actually hit me again and spun me round the right way round, but we lost a chunk of time and a few places in the process. JD also losing a few positions down to 7th place, and we're down to 8th. Louis Delatraz from P11 up to P6 in the Haas. Fantastic job from him. And also Vandoorne, of course, even with the contact, he started 9th and got his way up to P5. So both of those guys getting a really good launch, as now myself and Terrell Limitless have to recover back to our starting positions as we go midway through lap 1 onto the back straight and try and look for a move. We've also got Ben Timothy behind us in the Red Bull in his home race, so he's going to be wanting to try and get the job done. As we go for the chicane though, Louis Delatraz getting very close to Vandoorne, and there's contact, and Vandoorne goes for a spin. We have to try and guess where he's going to go. We just about avoid his front wing, and by the smallest of margins we don't get collected, but someone who did get collected, I believe, was Jimmy Broadbent in the Toro Rosso, and he had nowhere to go. Unfortunately, Vandoorne came across the track and Broadbent hit him, so very, very unfortunate there for Jimmer in the Toro Rosso. But now towards the end of lap 1, Delatraz here, a little bit scruffy end of the lap from him, and now that's put Terrell Limitless on the back of him now as we go onto the start of lap 2. Veloce from Rodani setting the pace out front, and JD all over the back of the Haas. Is he going to go for a move into turn 1? Not quite. He backs off, but Delatraz misses his apex, and that's going to give JD all the motivation he needs and the invitation that he wants to try and have a look on the inside of turn number 3. Here he goes down the inside on the brakes, and I tried to have a look myself actually and benefit from the overtake, but Delatraz, like a true racing driver in real life, gave me the full-on squeeze on the exit there, all over the sausage curb, and I had to back off and let him take that as we now cut onto the lap. At the end of the lap, sorry, Delatraz misses his apex and runs a bit wide again onto the gravel, and that's going to put me right on his gearbox going into the final couple of corners. I'm going to try and set up an overtake here, going for the final corner, trying to get a nice clean exit. Delatraz a bit wide, and there we go. We're going to get the momentum, and we're going to try and pull alongside, but my ERS in the bottom right is extremely low, because for this session, of course, we've got equal performance default setups and ERS set to auto to give everybody a fair chance, and I was running out of juice at the end of the straight, but we do get the move done on Delatraz down the inside as we now cut onto lap 4, setting a personal best, and you can see in front of us JD 1.5 up the road, and behind us Ben is 2.1, so we're going to kind of keep an eye on those gaps as we move forward in this race. Cutting onto lap number 6, we get a huge sack slapper there, massive moment. We just catch it at the final corner, but that could have been absolutely horrific. Damage is off, but we would have lost a heap of time in the process. But you can see on screen Ben now 4.5 behind and the gap to JD was still 1.5, so I'm hanging on to JD here. And speaking of which, JD goes for a spin out of the chicane, and that is going to give me P5 on a silver platter, and we're going to absolutely take that, and nothing less than I deserve. The pace was really, really good, and I was putting away from Ben. You know, we pulled away 2 seconds in 2 laps, and I was keeping up with JD, who managed to recover and actually hold on to 6th place after the spin. So fair play to him as we go towards the end of Sector 3, and we've got a yellow flag here for, I believe it was Nick AR12 Gaming in the Ferrari, who eventually got going again in the right direction. But yeah, really, really crazy start to the race, and my pace was legit. It wasn't just the one-off in qualifying. We had genuine race pace. I was watching the gap, and JD was pretty much matching my lap time sector per sector, as we've got Veloce Hypers, the first car to pit, and that was kind of the sign, and what the light bulb went off in my head that, you know what, we're going to go for the hard tyres, because I was struggling on my rears quite a lot, and I wanted to make this pit stop. And you'll see again now through the far chicane here, another moment as we get loose again, and again the rear tyres just confirming that they're ready to come off the car, because we were struggling for grip. So I was trying to get to lap 11 and fit on a set of mediums, but that was just a bit too far to go, or maybe even lap 10. So I decided to box now on lap 8 and go for the hard tyres. We've got Veloce James a little bit further up the road. He's also going to pit, actually, surprisingly, as do the leaders. But the difference is, James, I believe, is going to go for a medium tyre, whereas I'm going to go for the hard tyre. So I'm kind of hoping at this point that we can maybe get him at the end of the race. Maybe if my pace is good on the hard tyre, I may be able to get a bit of an overcut. But in terms of strategy, you can see James there, with damage turned off, the team released him. If damage was on, James would have been held, and that would have given me a bit of time, you know, to try and close in on him a little bit. I might have got a second back on side. But we do put on the hard tyres. We are going to rejoin, and we are going to rejoin just in front of the Real Madrid goalkeeper, Thibaut Courtois, who is in the racing point, and we do get a good run through turn 1, considering the compromised exit of the pit exit. And Courtois looking for a move, but he's not quite close enough. He also doesn't have DRS, so that's going to take the pressure off, and it's going to allow us to hold on to P7, and we can now crack on with our race. 20 laps to go, and let's see what we can get out of this Grand Prix as we now cut on to lap number 10. And you can see in the pit lane we've got Thibaut Courtois making his first stop, so that's going to give us P6, and I believe he's going to go to the medium tyres, actually, is Ben. So we now move on to the start of lap 11. You can see JD behind us, he's 4.2 behind, and he's also on the hard tyres. So exact same strategy for the both of us as we cut on to the end of lap 12, onto the start of lap 13. Lando Norris, who started in last place, he's going to box for a medium to hard tyre strategy in the McLaren, and we take back our P5. So we're now back to where we were. Pace is still good. JD, you can see 4.1 behind, so he's not really making much progress in terms of catching me up. And we cut on to lap 14 now, and I made a bit of a mistake here, and this was my third moment of the race. We get extremely close to the wall yet again, the back end all over the place, and somehow, though, we didn't lose much time. JD still 4.2 behind us as we cut on to the midway through lap 15, and the pace was strong. I was really, really doing well. The car was working beautifully well, and unfortunately I couldn't keep pace with James. He was too fast on the mediums as we make our way towards the end of the lap. But looking at the minimap in the bottom left, Chiro Limolas actually lost it out of the right-hander there. I believe he got a bit of a spin on the curb and lost a couple of seconds. He still manages to hold on to P6, but that is going to take the pressure off, and you know, we can relax a little bit and breathe. And I thought to myself, you know what, JD made a mistake. We've got a bit less pressure now. We can start to push and, you know, not be so worried. And you'll see across the line that the gap to JD, I believe, is 8.4 seconds, just to confirm that, yes, it is. And on this lap, I was actually pushing quite hard, and they almost bit me in the rear end for a third time or a fourth time this race. As you'll see here through the chicane, I ran a bit wide on the exit, and we're going to get extremely loose again, and it's yet another catch, and we get away with it. And I was so nervous after that. I was sweating after those mistakes. As now on lap 18, we catch up to Nick AR12 Gaming in the Ferrari. We are going to lap him, and because damage is off, we can ghost through the car and not lose any time in terms of navigating. And we're going to also pick up DRS as well as a little added bonus as we move on to the final 10 laps of the Grand Prix here. You can see on lap 20, the fuel started to burn off and the pace started to improve as we improved by quite a margin on our personal best. And it was at this point where the gap to James peaked at about 9 seconds, and I was starting to bring him in a little bit, you know, lap by lap, sector by sector. He was catching up as we got McLaren now. I believe that's Willany in the McLaren who's backwards at the chicane, and every single lap, you know, we were setting good laps, relatively decent personal best, and we got the gap inside 9 seconds. You can see there to James in the top left as the laps tick over, and I did believe I could catch him. I knew James had a 3-second time penalty, so I was trying to hunt him down. We now catch up to some more traffic in the form of my teammate Sasha Fenitraz and also Arav in the second Ferrari here. These two were battling for quite a while, and I was giving Sasha some feedback and also some encouragement and some tips and tricks over Discord, trying to tell him how to beat Arif and try to get ahead of him. But unfortunately, Sasha was on the medium tyres, Arif was on the hards, and Sasha's tyres were starting to go at this point, as were James's tyres in front of me in P4. As we're going to try and get past Arif here, get in the DRS. Hopefully, as we carry the speed through the chicane, and there we go, beautiful. And Arif getting a bit loose as we open up the DRS. We're going to stay in the slipstream. Of course, ghosting is enabled, so we can just go straight through and use the slipstream to the very last second, and we make the move on Arif there. And we now cut all the way onto the last lap of the race, and I tried my best. There was a bit of an altercation here at the final corner. I believe Louis Delatraz was involved. I'm not quite sure who the car in front is, but that's a Haas in front of us as we make our way up to the line. But Veloce Formula Danny wins the Not Australian Grand Prix, and we come home for a phenomenal 5th place, and by far that was the best race I've ever done in my life. Any form of online race, I was so happy. That's definitely in my top 3 without a doubt, maybe even top 2. There may have been a good race in the past, but off the top of my head, considering the caliber of drivers in this race, look at the top 4. Lando, JD, Ben, Simon Weigang, we really put in a shift, and I was really happy. Also, I was one of the few drivers to not get a penalty, so again, I kept it clean, really happy about that, and I didn't abuse track limits the entire race. But Formula Danny wins the race ahead of Jan Altmaier, and Veloce Hypers in 3rd place. Then Veloce James is P4 ahead of myself in 5th. Then we've got Lando Norris, phenomenal recovery from 19th on the grid all the way up to P6, with JD in 7th place in the end after those 2 incidents, with Ben right behind him, I believe, on track, crossing the line almost together, and Ben finishes in 8th place for Red Bull. Simon Weigang, F1 Esports driver, down in 9th place after that incident in the first lap. I believe he had a few other penalties to serve in the race as well. And then Esteban Gutierrez, phenomenal recovery from him from 20th on the grid to 10th place, just like Lando Norris, a really strong recovery from him, with then Thibaut Courtois in 11th place, just missing out the points in the racing point, and again, due to possibly wheel issues, he wasn't able to show his true pace. But then we've got Super GT in 12th, Jimmy Broadbent in 13th, so both of the Torossos there just outside the points, with I believe Jimmy having a few issues on the first lap. Looking back at his stream, he seemed to have a horrific lap 1. None of it was his fault, just got caught up in the crossfire. And then Ryan Tavita in P14 to round things off. And shout out to Ryan again, because he flew on the same day from New York down to Miami to deliver the sim rig to Stoffel Vandoorne, and then flew back, I believe, on the same day, just the day before the event. So absolute trooper, Ryan Tavita. And then unfortunately, I didn't take a screenshot of the results in the bottom half because I just forgot to at the time. But we've also got my teammate down there, we've got Arif down there, we've also got AR12 Gaming, Stoffel Vandoorne as well was down. But other than that, that is it for the Not Australian Grand Prix. Danny Bolesne is the winner, and Bahrain is next. It looks like there's going to be a second race. Whether I'm racing or not, whether the grid is going to be exactly the same, who knows? That's yet to be confirmed. There might be some different drivers, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. I have heard rumours of other drivers coming in, so if I'm racing the next one, you'll be seeing it on my channel. But if I'm not, I'm privileged, honoured and thankful that I got to race in this one race, and I made it count, and I put in the performance of a lifetime, so very happy about that. But guys, that is it for the Not Australian Grand Prix. Massive thank you to Veloce Esports and the entire team for setting it up. They did a fantastic job, and they worked overtime, over the clock, day and night to get this thing turned over in 3 days, so massive credit to them. And yeah guys, if you enjoyed this video, drop a big fat like on it and subscribe if you are new. I'd greatly appreciate it, guys, as the channel is doing really well at the minute, and I want to try and keep that momentum going into April. But yeah guys, subscribe if you're new, turn notifications to not miss any future content from me, because I do get messages saying people miss out on my videos quite often. And then also finally check out these 2 videos on your screen if you have missed them. But that is it for the Not Australian GP, and I'll see you guys possibly in the next one for the Not Bahrain Grand Prix.